Program will begin shortly. Launch sequence. Activate. Warning, the following content is not politically correct. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome back to the channel today, everyone. I'm Sarah Higdon, and this is Transform to Freedom. We are back again this week. We were off last week. Just a lot going on last week, but like I said, if you didn't see, you still could have watched me last week if you pay attention to my stories. So I was traveling. We were doing something at Free the People on Tuesday, so I was going up to Knoxville on Tuesday. So I wasn't actually able to make the show on Monday because I was packing and getting ready for that because I was leaving at about 4 a.m. to drive up there. No, actually, I got up at 4 a.m. I drove up there at 5 because it was a long drive and we had a long day ahead of us. But it was good stuff. You'll see a little bit coming out from that. I don't know when exactly all the content that we shot is going to be coming out, but if you don't already, make sure you subscribe to Free the People on YouTube, X, and all other platforms because that's I do that's my main gig, right? So that's my main job is over there running their digital marketing program. So definitely check them out. I don't think I say that enough on here. This show is independent though of them because I can say what I want on here and not have to worry about different regulations and stuff like that with them. Even though I think they pretty much agree with me. we have a lot of different opinions and stuff of things that are going on at the organization, but definitely go check them out. So that's why I wasn't here last week. And I'm not going to be here next week because I am going to be traveling much further out of state. I'm actually leaving on Saturday. Not going to tell exactly where I'm going. Maybe if you subscribe to me across most platforms, you will see some stuff that I'm doing while I'm on this trip because it is I'm calling it a working trip. I'm gonna be hanging out with some cool people while I'm out and doing stuff. So yeah, just check out. Like I said, just watch some of my stuff, and you'll see kind of where I'm heading and where I'm at certain times. Especially like my Instagram and Twitter. That's probably what I update the most. So I won't be here next week though. So, but like I said, if you were here last week and you wanted to see me, you could have watched me on the Dr. Phil show. This is actually a pretty cool experience that I got to do. Wrong one. So I was on the Dr. Phil show with Blossom again. Yes, that Blossom. We met up once again. We were talking. The main point behind the show was to talk about males and female sports, which y'all know, like, is something that I completely disagree with. Since I've been really doing content, this has been something that I've been against from the very beginning, and I've talked about from the very beginning. The episode's really good. It had Linnea Saltz, who was a college track athlete. So Linnea was a college athlete, was one of the first female athletes to start speaking out against males and female sports after a trans athlete started winning competitions in 2019. And so she saw that happen and raised her voice at that time. Linnea seems great. I didn't really get to talk to her very much, but she had a good story to tell. Most of her story was most of the first half of the episode. You can go actually watch it, the full episode, and I do implore you to do so on the Dr. Phil podcast. So it's Dr. Phil podcast here on YouTube. And of course, Blossom was on there. And the thing is Blossom's not an athlete, so I don't know. It is interesting that Blossom's the only person willing to go on these shows to talk about this. I see a lot of people saying, why do you keep platforming Blossom, especially on the trans sports issue, in the comment section and stuff like that. And I will say, I do know that the Dr. Phil show cast a very wide net when it came to the progressive activists that they asked to come on this show. They actually were trying to get trans athletes to come on and basically defend their existence. And yet Blossom is like the only one that reached out, or was the one that reached out first, was the one that responded first. And it just kind of goes to show, like, Blossom is willing to go anywhere for attention, but nobody else is willing to go on these shows to defend what I would consider the indefensible, which is male athletes in female sports. Doesn't make sense. And there's nothing that you can say or do to change my mind on that. I've seen the stats, and actually I thought this episode was really interesting because Dr. Phil was very good at did something I've never seen done before, was very much disarm Blossom in a way with stats and facts and with absolute calmness that really was it was quite phenomenal to watch, where I didn't actually have to go in like attack mode per se to start, attacking Blossom's arguments fully, because Dr. Phil had the stats and everything ready and pulled them and had them pulled up, which I think I did a fantastic job at articulating points. But generally when I do these types of things, there's always stuff that I wish I would have said at the end of the show. And sometimes I forget what I say on these shows. So I kind of like waited till this one came out and was like, oh, what did I say? What did I say? And if you remember 2 weeks ago when I was on this show, I was expecting that the episode was going to come out 2 weeks ago. But I do think that I presented a clearly what how I view things. I clearly represented what I feel like, what I believe in terms of what gender dysphoria is, what I believe in terms of trans stuff is. Oh, so the Todd, how many times did she tell him not to interrupt a black trans woman when she's speaking? None. That's what I mean. This was the only time I've ever seen Blossom not even speak, not even utter her race at all. Like, Blossom didn't say anything about race in this entire episode, which was kind of astounding to me, because I've never seen that happen. Everything I've ever seen Blossom do is the full intersectionality tropes, right? And I was ready. So this is the other thing, is I was ready to go in there and have kind of this knockdown drag out like Blossom had with Riley Gaines and Pierce Morgan. that didn't happen because Dr. Phil is very good at what he does and disarm Blossom, but also it is interesting because I do know that Blossom was apprehensive to even be seen with me on camera again, or didn't really want to have a debate style. The producers, and I won't put this on Blossom completely because I don't know, but I will say that the producers of the show approached me and said, if we put you on camera towards the end with Blossom and Linnea, are you like, would you hold back on what you say, like not be argumentative? I said, yeah. I said, I absolutely. I mean, that's not my debate style anyways. I'm not somebody who's going to go out there and just push the buttons and just attack somebody. That's not me. I will go out there. My style is to go out there and meet the person on the other side where they're at. So I said, if Blossom starts going down this road of intersectionality, I can go there. But if not, if we're just simply talking about sports, we'll keep it there. So I went where I was. I went where I will always meet somebody where they're at, and we'll talk about what they want to. I'm very comfortable doing that. I don't have to go out there and insult somebody. I don't have to go out there and attack their even their root ideals, which I know that they have. I can go out there and argue the facts that they are trying to bring to the table, which is kind of what I did in this situation. And it ended up being a really good interview. And then towards the end, we did go a little bit longer than so we were able to film the full podcast episode, which is actually the full podcast was like 55 minutes, where it's interesting because most of this seems like a lot of the stuff I do is the longest episodes of anything. So like the Jubilee video was an hour and a half, where most Jubilee episodes are only an hour. This was 55 minutes, where most of these episodes are only 45 minutes. So we actually pushed for like a full hour podcast episode too. I will say one of my favorite parts though is towards the end of the show. We actually moved a little bit away from sports, and we started talking about gender dysphoria and stuff as a whole. And this was one of the things that this is one of my favorite parts of the episode, and it's something that we don't talk about enough, and that's like what gender dysphoria is, because I think a lot of people have a very misguided understanding of it, right? So I mean, one of the things I do wish I would have talked about when I was on there was talked about like the post-trans and why we need to get rid of using gender language, because I do feel like I fell back into using the gendered language, like the traps again. But I didn't get to do that. I still think it was a good episode. But talking about what gender dysphoria is, or what dysphoria in and of itself is, was really, I think, beneficial because it really did hammer home to the people maybe on the right side of the aisle who don't necessarily know what gender dysphoria is. A lot of people see it as a delusion. I think somebody in the comment section here said that's right. It's not a mental illness of delusion. It's a mental illness of anxiety and uncomfortability, basically, of what is there. And so this is, I do want to play this clip. I hope that I don't get kicked for this, and I hope that they don't take this down. But I just want to take this. I'll probably lose monetization on this video for this, but that's okay. I do want to play this clip though.
Sarah, when you say you view this as gender dysphoria and a mental illness, do you feel like you suffer from that as you sit here today? Is this something you've resolved? Where do you come down on that aspect of this?
Yeah, I think gender dysphoria in and of itself is not curable. We just try to live as best as we can with it. I mean, so a lot of people want to mix up what gender dysphoria is, and a lot of people will mix it up with body dysmorphia, and that's why you hear people calling it a delusion. It's not a delusion. It's actually the exact opposite. So gender dysphoria is defined by an uncomfortability between your secondary sex characteristics. And so when you have that uncomfortability, what you do is you're changing your body to ease your mind's discomfort in those secondary sex characteristics, and that's done by taking hormones and having surgeries. But I still feel that I still have the dysphoria still there, and it does crop up every once in a while.
So one of the things I wish I would have said is probably that I am very happy. I'm happy in my transition, but it's still not a curable thing. That's the part that I think left out, was that yes, I do suffer from this, but I am happy in my transition. I'm happy with the choice I made to go through this process, and it has alleviated that discomfort.
And you started having this pull, this awareness at a very young age, correct?
Yeah, it's my earliest memories from the time I was probably about 4 years old is when I remember that I wanted to be a girl. I knew it wasn't right that I wasn't a girl, but I knew I had to hide it because I grew up through the 90s. Even though my family is very accepting, it was just not normal. It was just not normalized at the time. And so it was very early on. And now we've started to see the studies coming up, and we do know that you really can't properly diagnose gender dysphoria until that's happy in their transition, knew at a very young age that something was different, and then they made it to adulthood. And once they hit adulthood, that's about when the regret rates or the desist rates drop. And so I really don't think that we can properly diagnose gender dysphoria until at least adulthood.
Mm-hmm. It really bothers me when I see people allowing children to make adult decisions and allowing children to make decisions that they just can't reverse. They make decisions and allow children to participate in hormone suppression therapies, testosterone blocking, even prepubescently, and certainly surgical procedures for sex reassignment, whatever you want to call gender affirming care, which to me is just a marketing term. That's not a medical term, that's a marketing term. Then when they detransition, they don't understand that's a very problematic and very painful thing. And even if they just go through the chemical aspects of this, that creates very hellish existence for the rest of their life once they decide, no, that's not what I wanted to do.
Yeah, I have a lot of friends that are in the detransition community, and I really feel for them, and we need to protect them a whole lot more, because part of the issue is that the statute of limitations for medical malpractice lawsuits for doctors who have manipulated patients and parents into this, it's only about 3 years in most states, and the average detransition takes place between 5 and 10 years. And so we're not able to even get a lot of those lawsuits into court even after the fact, when most of the time we're seeing a lot of them are manipulated into it, and most of them, there's a high rate of autism, there's a high rate of other comorbidities, mental health issues that go along with this, that either present as gender dysphoria, or a doctor just kind of throws that idea out there and they grab onto it and think that it is gender dysphoria.
Yeah, well, it's certainly a very complex issue.
So one thing that I
Sarah, when you say you view this,
one thing with that I would have helped, I do also, when it comes to detransitioners, is I think it's very, one of the other things that we need to do to help detransitioners and protect detransitioners is insurance companies. So if insurance companies are willing to cover, I believe insurance companies should be completely private and be able to cover what they want to cover, and government should stay out of that, because should be more of a free market enterprise, right? And they should be able to cover what they want. But I think if you're gonna cover gender related care,
then you also need to cover detransition care, because what's happening is a lot of these insurance companies are being forced, or they're doing it on their own, and they're covering the trans aspect, the sterilization and the going into trans, and allowing people to make these extreme body modifications, and then they're not covering the care when that's not what's right. And a lot of detransitioners left high and dry because a lot of these doctors don't necessarily know how to treat them, and there's not really a monetary value for them, and they're having to pay out of pocket, and they're in a tough situation. So, I think that some of these states across the country have pushed forth what would be considered a detransition bill of rights type thing, where it would be extending the medical malpractice lawsuits well past the 3-year limit in most states, as well pushing for forcing insurance companies to cover detransition if they cover trans-related care. And I think that we need to do both of those things. But this was a fun experience. I honestly, I think there's so much good in there in that whole episode. What I will say, and so I would definitely implore everybody to go watch it. I support me, post clips. I would say post clips, because here's what happened this week. So some of the bigger accounts on X got the clips, pulled some of the clips from this show, but guess what? It's only Blossom. And I kind of mentioned this. It's like this is prime example of the squeaky wheel getting the grease, where you have me and you have Linnea. Well, so you have Blossom, who's talking about all the normal, like, kind of crazy stuff when it comes to trans stuff. It's really not making any sense, talking about the same stuff as actually the ACLU lawyer talked about. And it's like, well, you're giving me the stats for men or males, but trans women aren't males. That's what Blossom said in this episode. And so that's the clip that people are playing online. And I'm like, but if you actually watch the full episode, like, that makes trans people look bad. That makes all trans people look bad. And obviously that's not helping our acceptance rate. That's what I fight against. And guess what? I was on this episode and I completely dismantled all the arguments in that Blossom made. And so this is kind of posting a clip when they could have spliced in me, or even, and Linnea was on there, not even mentioning Linnea, and her story is great too. That's the type of stuff that gets frustrating, because it's like, if you watch the full episode, I was on there and completely combated everything that Blossom was saying on there. So I just it's like, come on, guys. Like, you could have at least spliced in some of the other stuff, like me combating the points on, like, the different points that Blossom made. But that doesn't get clicks as much. And it shows people like me, people with gender dysphoria who are happy in their transition, in a good light, because we're fighting on the same side as this stuff. And I think I don't really blame the people who posted it, because that is what's going to get the attention. That's what's going to get the clicks. That's what's going to make your point. But at the same time, I wish people would go and actually watch the full episode, because I was there to counter every argument that Blossom made. In a 55-minute video, they pulled a 1-minute clip, and it's not really reflective of everything that was said in that entire video. So, get off my soapbox a little bit there. I do want to congratulate, this was a couple weeks ago, congratulate Dr. Jay Bhattacharya for being confirmed as the head of the National Institute of Health, which is quite ironic because as a co-author of the Great Barrington Declaration, Dr. Bhattacharya was labeled a fringe epidemiologist by Francis Collins and Tony Fauci and the like. And now Francis Collins was the previous head of the NIH. So he basically just replaced the person that called him a fringe epidemiologist. And this was one of the things that he's worked. We've done a few things. He was our first guest on the Cover Up episode 1, which is actually over on the Blaze TV, which is what a docuseries that we are producing at Free the People. But this was actually an episode of Kibbe on Liberty, this clip. So here's what he said.
There was an astonishing moment. At one point, one of the justices actually said out loud, if what you're saying is that the American First Amendment hinders the action of the government, as if it were a new discovery. I mean, of course.
Or as if that was a bad thing.
But well, that's the thing. It's like the whole point is that Congress shall make no law. The government is supposed to be hindered. They're not supposed to do these things because it violates our fundamental civil liberties. And I go further than that. I'd say that if we had an actual functioning First Amendment during the pandemic, a lot of the harms that we saw to people, a lot of people that would have been avoided. Many people that are now dead would be alive. The government was the number one source of misinformation during the pandemic. It put forward very destructive ideas like 2 weeks to slow the spread. The lockdown will save us from COVID.
Yep, I agree, fully agree, and it's great to see that Dr. Bhattacharya is now the head. Also, if you watched me last week, I did put out a video last week, right? It was about Disney, or 2 weeks ago. No, it was 2 weeks ago. So I did go watch the Snow White movie. Again, go watch that video I put out. The movie itself, you can see the undertones, everything like that. It tanked in the box office, which doesn't surprise me at all. I don't necessarily, again, think it was completely Rachel Ziegler's fault. Though it was an interesting conundrum that they were in with Rachel Ziegler. But now they have finally, I think a lot of people are kind of breathing sighs of relief when it comes to Disney has halted its Tangled project after Snow White bombs at the box office. So could this be the end of these live action remakes? Maybe. We'll see. So there was we went and watched the movie. Me and Maggie went and watched the movie, and it was interesting because when we're watching, they had the trailer for Lilo and Stitch, which looked like it actually looks like a good movie. So it's like, wow, that one actually looks really good. So I think Lilo and Stitch will do really well in the box office. So if it does well, I don't know. Maybe that puts this back on the schedule, but I don't know. Snow White's about to lose like $100 and something million. So, yeah, it's about to, so we'll see if that goes forward. Another thing, so kind of catching up on stuff that we've talked about before. The Naval Academy has removed 380 DEI books, including genderqueer, how to be an anti-racist, and in books like that. So again, I think the cultural war is changing. We are winning. Another thing, so we talked about it a few weeks ago. Again, this kind of goes back to the males and female sports. World Athletics announced that they will verify sex now via cheek swab. That's how easy it is, a cheek swab. So, yeah, non-invasive, cheap, effective, necessary to ensure fairness in female athletes, which is interesting because, like, yeah, you have to get a sports physical, and for a male, a sports physical is a lot more invasive than a simple cheek swab. Just saying, but all athletes are going to get a cheek swab, which not only should the NCAA follow suit,
all sports bodies should follow suit. So this is what they said at the World Athletics.
So on the gender verification, what are the pre-clearance tests, and will they apply to every athlete trying to compete in women's athletics?
Look, the pre-clearance testing will be for athletes to be able to compete in the female category. The process is very straightforward, frankly, very clear, and it's an important one.
So are these swab tests?
Well, yeah, the swab test. I mean, we've had the working group and our medical teams have been looking at that. But look, that is largely the two determinants here are firstly finding the right provider, because we are a global sport, so you do need to provide a provider with the capacity, the scale and capacity to be able to do that, and cheek swab or the dry blood test. But yeah, it'll be it's along the lines of something that will be administered once in the career of an athlete, a female athlete.
Why do you think it's so important to do it? And also, are the DSD parameters changing as well?
It's important to do it because it maintains everything that we've been talking about, and particularly recently, about not just talking about the integrity of female women's sport, but actually guaranteeing it. And this, we feel, is a really important way of providing confidence and maintaining that absolute focus on the integrity of competition.
I'm sorry, I just say, finally, are you prepared for any resistance about some criticism if it's too intrusive?
No, neither of these are invasive. They are necessary, and they will be done to absolutely international medical standards. We would never.
So, Libby, this is just a clip from the World Athletics head talking about the cheek swab that they're going to do in terms of verifying sex in their female athletes, to verify that they are actually female. So to verify that they're not males, or they're not, males with DSD conditions that make them present as females. So this is what every athletic body should start doing. But going into what we talked about with gendered language and whatnot. So this is part of the problem. This is what you actually saw Blossom do when we were on Dr. Phil as well, is you see they are change, again, it's the language that they're using to argue. And I mentioned this in my post-trans video. So Chase is a lawyer for the ACLU that's arguing a lot of the stuff for the ACLU in terms of this, and says, if you are angry or think it's unfair for trans girls to be a cis girl in a sporting event, there's no such thing as cis. Let's just cis is not a word. I don't buy into that. It's just be a girl. Girl is an adolescent female, or adolescent female, or a human adolescent female. So for a trans girl to be a girl in a sporting event, then you don't think trans girls are real girls. It's as simple as that. And that's kind of the whole point, right? Yeah. Again, go back and watch my episode with Dr. Phil. I talk about the definitions of men and women, how trans women are a subsection of men. We can't change that because a man is an adult human male. And so, yeah, that's kind of the whole point about it. But they're trying to make this argument. And so they're trying to make this, now this is the next step, right? Because they can't really argue on a lot of their merits. So they say, well, you don't think we're real girls, then yeah. Trans women are not women. And so they shouldn't be competing in female sports. They shouldn't be competing in women's sports. This is why we need to get away from using girls and boys, men and women, and simply using male and female.
Yeah, so that's kind of what go, and I can't believe that's the argument that the lawyer for the ACLU is going to make. Doesn't make sense. But y'all, I'm telling you right now, I am tired of these trans activists out here making things harder for other people like me that have taken, hormones and had surgeries to appear as the opposite sex, dysphoric people who are ruining our acceptance rate, who can't just go on and just live their lives and not try to disrupt people. So this person is Marcy Rank. I don't even know how to say this person's last name. The Adventures of Peaches asked, have you seen the new Brianna Wu Marcy Bowers debate? I have not. I saw it. I don't know if I could get through much of it, right? One, Marcy's crazy. I saw Marcy at a conference. I actually went undercover last year. I got some undercover footage still sitting in my phone from a conference last year that Marcy was speaking at. I tried to get an interview. I tried to get an interview with Marcy Bowers last year to confront on some of the issues that are being pushed, that even Marcy Bowers has shown to be, not good with putting children on hormone blockers and whatnot. So I couldn't imagine how bad it would be to have two. I mean, because Brianna's pushing stuff as though she's in the center, and I'll as though she's a moderate. And I do have respect for Brianna because she's opened her eyes and does see what's happening with the progressive movement in trans activists. And it's amazing because you have somebody who, like Brianna, who I would still consider to be a liberal, at least a liberal on the left side of the aisle on these things, talking to Marcy Bowers, who, if they're arguing about stuff, Marcy's way over on the left. So I can just imagine how crazy that would kind of be. But no, I didn't watch it. But like this other Marcy goes to the Florida, I don't know, I think went to the Florida Capitol, maybe. I think calls the police. I don't know the full story, but calls the police, says, I'm a trans person. I'm going to use this bathroom at this time. And then when gets there, they're there, says, I'm here to get arrested, basically. The thing is one, if you are a trans person, trans woman especially, you don't take pictures in bathrooms and post it on the internet. Don't take pictures in bathrooms at all. How about we just do that? How about we stop taking pictures in bathrooms? Don't take pictures in bathrooms. Don't actually try to get arrested in bathrooms. All this stuff does is make you look like a creeper who has no respect for females at all. If you like, because this person, obviously, they had gone into the bathroom, just gone in, went to the bathroom, left, there would have been no issue. And they wouldn't have actually violated Florida state law by doing that. See, this, even trying to fight like the Florida law doesn't make sense. The Florida law is actually quite reasonable, in my opinion. The Florida law, and we've talked about it on this show, said it's only for government funded buildings, which, as you know, I believe that government funded buildings should have third spaces for not just people like me, but also for parents with younger children. They can have their own. They can go in there with their children, especially opposite sex children, and they can use those third spaces. And the most reasonable trans people would do that, right? The Florida law says if you go into the bathroom that's not your sex and you are asked to leave and you refuse, that's a violation of the law and it's trespassing. But it doesn't say anything about actually just going in and going to the bathroom and then leaving. It's technically not a violation of the law because it's a trespassing law. I would say, so really it's a law that most trans people should be like, okay, if I get asked to leave, I'll leave. But if I don't, if nobody asks, if a staff member does not ask me to leave, then it's not trespassing at that point. Because any trespassing law, you actually have to get asked to leave. It's just kind of codifying that into law. I think it's a fairly reasonable law. By pushing these boundaries, you are making it harder for all trans people. You're going to cause you're almost daring them to push the law further. And most people aren't going to like bat an eye if the legislation goes in and then passes a law that makes it even harder for you to live your life. It's being confrontational for no reason. It's not a good way to protest. And honestly, if these activists were smart at all, they would actually send a if you wanted to show some of the issues with the law, you send a trans man in there and see how people react to a trans man going into the female restroom. Because they are female, they would be following the law and using the restroom that they are required to use under the law. That would show a little bit difference as to why some of these broad laws don't make as much sense as they may seem. This law is fine. I think that this law is fine, but the law has to be written where trans men have to be accepted into the female restroom. And that's what this does. So send a trans man into the female restroom if you are really serious about it. Otherwise, sending trans women in there just makes trans women, again, look like creeps. And it doesn't help our acceptance. In fact, all it does is hurt. And when you kind of prove the point of this bill when you then try to claim that you're passing, that you're so passing, you would have passed completely, that you would have gone in there and nobody would have noticed. So you actually had to call on yourself. That is what, that kind of proves the point that this law works just fine. The law works to keep the creepy, AGPs, the fetishists out of the bathroom. That's exactly what it's intended to do. It's not necessarily intended to keep transsexuals who have been using the female restroom forever out, who are respectful and kind to the people when they go in there and just want to get in there and get out, do their business, get out. So I don't have any respect for this person. I think it's only hurting our acceptance rates. Oh, let's talk about tariffs for a second. Okay. It is the title of the show, and we've already gone 43 minutes, not even talking about it at all. So let's talk about tariffs, because that's what everybody wants to talk about this week. What is going on? Uh-oh. That's not what. That's not. Okay, that's actually was an ad popped up on a different browser, so you guys didn't see that. But no, it's so I think so. Donald Trump has, if you haven't seen, Donald Trump has looked into passing sweeping tariffs, broad tariffs against like every country in the world, and he's calling them retaliatory tariffs, right?
First off, I don't know if they're even constitutional, because I mean, a tariff is a tax on the consumer, so it's technically we talked about this I think before, but it's a tax on the American people. Only Congress, who has the power of the purse, according to the Constitution, has the authority to issue a new tax, and that includes tariffs. Other than in certain circumstances where they have been deemed constitutional and it's mostly in terms of national security, right? So he's able to do this in terms of national security. So if you're looking at all these countries that he's enacting tariffs on, and he's saying that they're a national security threat, that might be a stretch, right? So I don't even know if they're constitutional in and of themselves. We'll see. I think the courts might take this up. But tariffs, there's a few plays that I'm not a fan of tariffs at all. There are some things that I'm going to talk about, though, that we'll see what the play is. Because I do have an idea, and I've kind of considered it a moonshot, because I think if this happens, it will be a very good thing. But it is such a big gamble, and I don't see it happening at this time, that I'm not quite sure. I don't think the gamble's worth it, in my opinion. We'll see. We'll see what happens. So one of the things that it's obvious that Trump is trying to do is he's trying to pressure the Federal Reserve into cutting interest rates. Whereas the Federal Reserve chair says tariffs will raise inflation, which Powell's right in general. So especially broad-based tariffs on all goods, tariffs, everything we use on a daily basis, some component of that item is made in another country. Just about every item we use is made. There's parts of it that are made in other countries that we import. And even if it's made in America, quote, we import items to put into that. So every item that we import, there is a tax on it. Would have a new tariff, and it would have a tax on it. And that would then likely be passed on to the end consumer. And what this ends up doing, it ends up hurting the mom and pop shops, because they have to keep their profit margins, and it's going to be even harder for them to compete with the Walmarts and the big Amazons and stuff like that, who can tamper some of that via logistics costs and stuff like that. That they are able to keep prices low because they buy stuff at scale. So it's called economies of scale. When you buy more, it costs less. And so you can generally get a better price off of that, and it will generally hurt mom and pop shops. It'll hurt the small business owners in favor of big business. Trade wars in general as well don't necessarily help the economy that much. And it is actually interesting, with last week that there was rumors that Elon Musk might be leaving the administration. There was some talk about this. And now the trade wars are coming on, and then Elon Musk posts this video of the great Milton Friedman, one of my favorite economists, discussing the pencil. Now, if you don't know, the Foundation for Economic Education, which is actually where Maggie works and does content over at, they have a book from Leonard Reed that's called iPencil, which is kind of what he's quoting in this discussion right here. But it's talking about how everything we use, it's what I was just saying, everything we use on a daily basis, even going back to the same pencil, to the littlest pencil, is built by stuff made from all around the world. So this is what he says.
There's not a single person in the world who could make this pencil. Remarkable statement? Not at all. The wood from which it's made, for all I know, comes from a tree that was cut down in the state of Washington. To cut down that tree, it took a saw. To make the saw, it took steel. To make the steel, it took iron ore. This black center, we call it lead, but it's really graphite, compressed graphite. I'm not sure where it comes from, but I think it comes from some mines in South America. This red top up here, the eraser, bit of rubber, probably comes from Malaya, where the rubber tree isn't even native. It was imported from South America by some businessmen with the help of the British government. This brass ferrule, I haven't the slightest idea where it came from, or the yellow paint, or the paint that made the black lines, or the glue that holds it together. Literally thousands of people cooperated to make this pencil. People who don't speak the same language, who practice different religions, who might hate one another if they ever met. When you go down to the store and buy this pencil, you are in effect trading a few minutes of your time for a few seconds of the time of all those thousands of people. What brought them together and induced them to cooperate to make this pencil? There was no commissar sending out orders from some central office. It was a magic of the price system, the impersonal operation of prices that brought them together and got them to cooperate to make this pencil so that you could have it for a trifling sum. That is why the operation of the free market is so essential, not only to promote productive efficiency, but even more, to foster harmony and peace among the peoples of the world.
So yeah, like I said, if you actually go to fee.org, you can buy a copy of iPencil, I believe, on here, or you can actually just read it. I think you can just read it on here. Yeah, you can download the ebook on fee.org, which again, you guys know, my best friend Maggie Anders, she's a content creator over at Fee, and so this is a oh wait, I didn't open this one up. So this is the you can go here, you can read a copy of this and understand how this all works and how the free market in and of itself works completely. So and the idea kind of comes to what this person actually put together. It's actually really great, or it's actually econlib.org put together with iPencil, talking about iPencil with tariff rates included, what happens and how you build a pencil and how that raises the cost. You asked, do you think he uses tariffs as a negotiating tactic as reform for how nations trade with us? That's what my thing, and this is kind of the moonshot that I believe could be happening, is his idea is to make a completely free market. He's putting tariffs on foreign goods, which again, they keep saying it's a short-term pain for us. You know why it's a short-term pain for us is because when you put that, it will, in theory, it will boost our production. The problem is it's going to take years before we can even have production plants available to even make these goods. So businesses it will be up to them whether it's worth it to produce these materials in the United States or still continue to pay for them at a tariff rate outside the country. In the short term, what I think he's trying to do, and this is what we'll talk about in a second, is he is trying to get some of these countries to come to and say, because these countries, we're the largest economy. The United States in and of itself is the largest economy, singular economy in the world. Everybody has to send their goods here because we are such a large economy and we use so much stuff.
to whereas when we send our stuff to other countries, they need to protect their industry. Because they need exports. We don't need exports like they need exports, right? If we could produce everything in house and we would be fine, where they need the exports to export to the United States. And so that's what I think he's trying to push for, a system where they are not tariffing us. So this is the thing. Some people are saying in his ear, I've seen this too, is some people are in his ear wanting permanent tariffs on these countries because it's almost like this idea where we pay so much into the United Nations and all these other countries don't, and they're not paying their fair share. Some people see it as that. They don't understand that, again, the consumer pays the tariff. I think that's what's going on with this. So this idea right here, though, is like the lead itself contains no lead at all. It's complex. It's graphite. It's mined in Sri Lanka. It's tariffed at 44%. Candle wax, the wax, 25%. East Indonesia with sulfur chloride is 32%. And the color is cadmium sapphire, 20%. Italy is part of the EU, therefore it gets an EU tariff rate of 28%. So again, you start to think a $1 pencil is 10% graphite. So 10% times 44, with a 44% tariff on it, that's the increase. You get a 25% increase on whatever this percentage is, and it just goes up from there. So that's how it happens. And it's not like a lot of this stuff's not just going to be made here in the United States. You're going to continue to pay more for a lot of this stuff. Now, as you're talking about, here is, I mean, the Trump tariffs brought out the great Thomas Sowell as well to talk about them, which is insane to me too. But here he's talking about the tariffs, kind of what you're asking me about when it comes to what he's trying to do when it comes to other nations, but also warning about the fact that this could be very bad.
What do you make of the present President of the United States and his tariffs?
It's painful to see what a ruinous decision from back in the 1920s being repeated. Now, insofar as he's using these tariffs to get very strategic things settled, and that he is satisfied with that. But if you set off a worldwide trade war, that has a devastating history. Everybody loses because everybody follows suit, and all that happens is that you get a great reduction in international trade. The other, it's disturbing in another sense. Franklin D. Roosevelt, when he was president in the 1930s, said that you have to try things, and if they don't work, then you admit it, you abandon that, and you go on to something else, and you try that until you come across something that does work. Now that's not a bad approach if you are operating within a known system of rules.
Mm.
But if you are the one who's making the rules, then all the other people have no idea what you're going to do next. And that is the formula for having people hang on to their money until they figure out what you're going to do. And when a lot of people hang on to their money, you can get results such as you got during the Great Depression of the 1930s. So if this is just a set of short-run ploys for various limited objectives, limited in time, fine, maybe. But if this is going to be the policy for 4 long years, that you're going to try this, you're going to try that, you're going to try something else, a lot of people are going to wait. I think what happened in the stock market recently, when things came down about substantially for quite a while, and I note that various people and are holding on to their money before they do anything, because they don't know where this is going to lead.
Yep. So that's what we're talking about. It's like, if he's planning for a short-term strategy, we'll see what happens. You know, this is what my boss, Matt Kibbe, said. Let's hope he's negotiating to lower tariffs and it's successful. Otherwise, it's Herbert Hoover 2.0. So if you don't know what that means, 1929, the stock market crashed. We had Black Friday, right? We weren't actually, even after the stock market crashed, the economy wasn't doing awful. We were in a recession. The country was in a recession, but it was still hanging around. In 1930s, Herbert Hoover enacted sweeping tariffs, which many economists have said launched us deep into the Great Depression. And then the Great Depression was extended by FDR's New Deal. Two things that didn't work very well for the country. So again, if these are short-term goals, as Thomas Sowell said, okay, but if this is going to be the policy for 4 years, we're going to be in a dark turn. And so this is actually, I just pulled this up. We have the Dow Jones today, right? So at opening, it dropped. People then started being like, oh, wait, it went, now the market's up, it's in the green. And what happened is there was rumors out there that Trump was actually going to suspend the tariffs for 90 days and not enact them for another 90 days. And so the market took that and went, oh, we got to get back into the game, right? And then the White House came out and said, that's bull. We're not going to suspend the tariffs for 90 days. And that's when it dropped back into the red. Now, there's a lot happening here, right? So we didn't have the sell-off, the Black Monday sell-off that they were expecting, because one, this doesn't take into effect the cost of living increases that we're going to see. This could be the set of a slow downturn, just like in where 1930 we had it continued to go down. It's not the sell-off that we saw in 1929, but it's a continued downturn. And as prices start to increase, we'll see more, right? But I think exactly what Thomas Sowell was like. Now, after these rumors came out that they might be suspending the tariffs, the market went up, then the market dropped, and then it kind of evened out. And I think what that even out is doing is people are just waiting and seeing. They're really not trading much because they want to see what Trump's going to do. Is he really going to enact these tariffs? There was also two other factors that came into play today. So China, in this note, China decided that they were going to up the ante and enact a 50% tariff. And again, China holds $700 billion of U.S. Treasury bonds. If they want just to dump those Treasury bonds and hurt the global economy, they could. China doesn't really care so much about their people. They're a communist country. So when you think about it, they can play a little bit harder with us. They're the next largest economy in the world. They could play a little bit harder with the U.S. And they own a lot of our debt, so that doesn't help us. But then you also had, let me see, I think I have it right here. You have, according to the Secretary of Commerce, there's 50 to maybe close to 70 countries, possibly 70 countries that have been approaching the administration saying they want 0 tariffs. And I think that this is the moonshot that we want, right? This is the outcome that we want. Now, we may not need to get the full deal. We may just need 70 countries, 50. Like, can all these 70 countries make up for all the production in China? this could actually help some of the smaller countries become wealthier countries if China keeps going down this road. If we start trading with these smaller nations rather than China, so this could, in essence, become a pretty good trade deal. I'm saying I don't think that the risk is worth it, but this is what they're saying.
I haven't.
This is the positive outcome that I could foresee happening, and that's what I kind of talked about a little bit in this post when I said when I look at the tariffs, I see one moonshot positive outcome and 1,000 negatives. The only real play is to hope that other nations drop their tariffs when we create an actual global free market. So complete 100% free trade, that would be the best outcome that I could see. Otherwise, we get an increase in cost goods of goods sold, even those products that we consider made in the U.S. But here's what. So this could be the sign. That's why it's kind of, I think the market leveled off, is because even though China is starting a trade war, all these other nations
Seen anything from them, but Larry, I can tell you that there are 50, 60, maybe almost 70 countries now who have approached us. So it's going to be a busy April, May, maybe into June. And Japan is a very important military ally. They're a very important economic ally. And the U.S. has a lot of history with them. So I would expect that Japan's going to get priority just because they came forward very quickly. But it's going to be very busy. And if President Trump, again, gave himself maximum negotiating leverage, and just when he achieved the maximum leverage, he's willing to start talking. I haven't seen anything from them.
So we'll see there. That would be a good outcome. Because I don't think we're going to bring manufacturing back here to the United States, like all this stuff to the United States, right? I kind of got, let me see where this is sitting. Yeah, people want to disagree with me on this. So my friend Hannah Cox said, if you think tariffs will bring manufacturing back to America, you have zero clue why manufacturing left. This is not a statement against the American manufacturing jobs. I actually think manufacturing jobs are great jobs. Unfortunately, we've told our youth that if you don't go to college, you'll never get a good job, thus signaling that manufacturing jobs are not good jobs. I've worked manufacturing jobs. My whole family worked in the auto industry. Like, I grew up near Detroit with family working in the auto industry. And it used to be that you could start on the line and then move up in the company. I've seen it happen. Like I said, a lot of my family, that's how they got to where they are today, in successful positions without college degrees, because they started at the low levels and learned and worked their way up through a company and then retired. But I don't think a lot of Americans want these jobs. And this is mostly the youth in our country, I'm saying, don't want to work these jobs. This a different generation. I think some will, but I also think that most of the times that these jobs are seen as, high school dropout jobs. A lot of these jobs are seen as looked down upon. Many people would rather be unemployed than work on a line, right? So like this is a generational thing to where a lot of people see themselves as being too good to work some of these positions, which again are good paying jobs. They're good jobs, they're good paying jobs. But if you have to go in and you have to, the minimum wage for these companies has to be $20-$25 an hour starting, you're going to have it's going to be extremely expensive for us to even buy those goods. So it's going to be very difficult. It's just not the country that we saw in the Industrial Revolution, where you could start on a line and move up. And that's not what the
the youth will not come out of high school and work in a manufacturing job like they used to do, unfortunately. So yeah, Todd, it says the cost of production is exactly why I left, so that the livable wage will not come. The manufacturing will be automated with the support staff needed, and for all the robots being college graduates. Yeah, but that's years down the line too. I mean, we got to think about that. It's years down the line before we even, have the assembly lines built to be able to do that. That may be what the future becomes, and this is what the UBI, the Universal Basic Income people, kind of talk a little bit more about, is that robots will do all the jobs. And you have to be highly skilled to run those jobs, or you have to have college degree just to run the robots, but not everybody will even be able to have a job. And that's why we need universal basic income. That is their basic premise. It will raise the cost completely. Cause yeah, if it's either a robot's going to do it or the cost of the good itself goes up. That's why we see McDonald's going up. But that is one of those things, and I took a lot of heat for this post right here, obviously, but I'm not making, like I said, I've worked in shops before. I worked in a prototyping shop. I've worked on a line that made for a company that made circuit boards. I worked my internship. I worked in this is why I actually do know how pricing works, because my background is in supply chain. I did my internship in college with for a purchasing group at a company that built powertrain assemblies. So they built the assembly lines that would make engines and transmissions for GM, Chrysler, Ford, all the big automotive industry. So I have the experience in this area. I actually worked for a temp agency one summer in college. I didn't have like a steady job. I actually was working for a temp agency to where they would send me to all different factories once they needed just somebody for a day here and there and there, right? So I would worked a lot of different jobs. And again, it's not young people that are doing these jobs. There's not a lot of young people working in these organizations. The people that are working in these organizations are getting older and older and older. And then you see, I mean, a lot of people started calling this the win, right? So, I mean, yes, crude oil futures dropped to a very low level today. Actually, that was yesterday that it hit this point. That's when this was pulled. A lot of people are calling this a win because it's signaling that gas prices are going to drop, which that could happen. That's probably that could happen, right? What this really tells you, though, actually, this is what this really tells you is that oil is based on futures, which means that they are setting the price based on expected demand. So what they're saying is they expect demand for oil to go down in the future. They're expecting it to go down, meaning that they're expecting that the long haul truckers are not going to be trucking as many goods. We're not going to be spending, there's not going to be the high demand to truck goods because the demand for said goods across the country are going to be down. Meaning that this is actually signaling that we may be going into a recession. That's what the oil feature. So a lot of people are looking at it at the price of gas is going to be low, which, yeah, that's great. But this dropping off like this means that they're expecting that we could be possibly going into a recession. Now, again, this is all predicated on what's happening, what's being said, and what's happening in the markets today. It could all change tomorrow if all these countries say we want to negotiate 0 tariffs, and Trump agrees. That would be the ideal end state. That would be an amazing end state, and I would celebrate that win. again, it's just it's a risk that I don't think I don't think it's going to work exactly like that. It may be a positive outcome, but history would show that it's not going to be. But we'll see. I'm not super positive about this one. Normally I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm not cautious. I'm not optimistic about this. Knowing economics, I'm nervous about this play. I'm not, and there's a lot of things. I think that this administration it's really kind of crazy watching this administration. We got all the cabinet members that we wanted, and actually, Dave Smith said it actually pretty accurately in this other post. Oh, yeah, but it's said it pretty accurately here, where we got Tulsi Gabbard now cheering on us bombing Yemen. We're bombing Yemen with an anti-war candidate. And when Thomas Massey kind of pointed out that it's to shore up shipping lanes from China to Europe, not really has to do with us stuff. And we're just bombing these countries, and these anti-war people like Tulsi Gabbard are cheering. That's concerning. You have, so this is that tweet, the message talking about the shipping lanes that we're protecting, the goods that are going through there that are not even U.S. companies. And then you have, now I again, we talked about revoking visas. I don't know, this action doesn't make sense from Rubio. I don't even know if this is constitutional, because it doesn't even hold any standard. It's like, it says, I'm taking actions to revoke all visas held by South Sudanese passport holders and to restrict any further issuance to prevent entry into the United States, effective immediately, due to the failure of South Sudan's traditional government to accept the return of its repatriated citizens in a timely manner. So we're going to send people who left their country because they don't like their country and want to help impact America in positive ways because they think they have a crap country. We're actually going to send them back to their crap country because their government is crap. Like, how does this make any sense? That this doesn't make any sense, and it is actually going back on the idea that we're just going after illegals. We're not just going after people who are here illegally. We're now going after visa holders, because the term visa holder means that they're here legally. So we're just going to take away visas because we don't like what they say. We don't like what their old government, which they don't like because they fled their old government here. We're just going to send them back. That makes no sense. And it is interesting coming from somebody like Marco Rubio, whose family came here from Cuba because Castro was crap. Could you imagine if the government had said, you know what, Castro's not the Cuban government's not going to take back all these illegal immigrants that are here, so we're going to take away all these visas and we're going to send people back. I mean, Marco Rubio wouldn't be here if our country had done that to them, to his family, when they were here on visas legally because their government was crap. That makes absolutely no sense. So, like, this whole thing, like, there's at the end of the day, I think I would give this administration probably what? I'd probably give it a B-, B-. We'll see where these tariffs go, but I'm telling you right now, it's like, now a B- would be the highest administration that I've ever given, because I think most administrations are worse than this administration still, and that's saying a lot because I'm giving this administration a B-, but it can turn around. It can be better. There's a lot of this stuff that I'm like, I didn't vote for this. You're going to, I thought we were, yeah, cool, get rid of the illegal immigrants here, but don't just like kick out people who are actively helping our country, actively making America a better place and and don't like their old government because their old government's crap and now you're just going to send them back to their old government. Like, we have a mutual understanding that the South Sudanese government is not good, right? Like, that's why they're here. It's like, I don't know, again, if this is even legal that they could just revoke passports because they want to. They have to, I mean, there's usually a due process in there. They usually have to, they have to have done something wrong for us to send them back. Not that their government did something wrong. That makes absolutely no sense. I do want to go back and just say, I do think that at the end, deregulation is what's really going to change this. Now, if we do want to implement these tariffs, those tariffs have to come with heavy deregulation so that we can actually lower the cost and make it more affordable for companies to hire American workers to build these things and to be able to pay them the wages that they're going to need to be able to live making in a manufacturing job. It is going to be deregulation. Now, Glenn Jacobs said it pretty well. I'll end it on this, but it's for decades, burdensome regulations has stifled American innovation and productivity. For instance, we rank in the bottom 1/3 of advanced nations in a time that it takes to bring a nuclear plant online, mostly due to permitting and regulatory requirements. There's a lot of discussion about nuclear renaissance, especially here in East Tennessee, the home of nuclear energy. But until we address the erroneous permitting and regulatory process, we will continue to lose ground to China. That is true across the economy as well. Cut through the red tape and taxes, and American innovation, ingenuity, and work ethic will stun the world. And I think that's what's key. I talked a lot about free market, the global free market, but we need to free the market here in the United States first. Deregulate here in the United States first, and you will see innovation more than you've ever seen anywhere in the world. We are starting to fall back. We're falling behind in innovative ideas because capitalism, pure blown capitalism without the regulatory state, promotes innovation, but we have this corporatist regulatory state that is very much preventing us from moving forward. On top of that, if we're going to implement these tariffs, we need to deregulate so that we can allow, again, our own free market to be able to cut through a lot of this red tape that's going to hinder the speed in which we can make up the cost of what those tariffs are going to cost us and build plants and hire workers at livable wages. We're just not there right now. And with the regulatory state that we live in, it's not going to happen, and it's not going to happen cheap. And if it does happen, it's not going to happen cheap, right? And I mean, this is about nuclear, and I believe in clean energy and nuclear energy very much so. It can actually help lower a lot of stuff, and we can move into that. And I think that Glenn's right in that. And I think that is what's going to change. So let's hope we see some change in. Let's hope we see some change this week in what happens. Let's hope that the president, Ted Cruz, actually said something that was good today that I saw, out of all people, who said, the president's got some angels and some demons on each shoulder right now, and the angels are basically saying if they start wanting these 0-0 trade deals, take them. But there's some people in the administration who want to put in permanent tariffs across the world, and that's just going to raise the cost of all goods, even quote American-made goods, and it's going to cause a lot of pain. It's going to cause the Republicans to lose the election next November because most people are going to be voting based on the economy.
We already know that the Democrats have their ground game out there, as we've seen losses in key elections already this year, in even populated swing or red areas like in Pennsylvania. It's going to be a fight, and if the economy is still down come next November, even during the next 2026 election cycle, it's going to be a painful experience, not just for the country, but for the Republicans that are in office, that are up for election in 2026. It's going to be a hard fight, and unfortunately, we will probably see a lot of losses. From the GOP, we'll see a lot of losses next year if the economy, if Trump doesn't negotiate trade deals, or if he doesn't back off on these tariffs, we could see a higher cost of living than we've ever seen. We could see a lot of the doom and gloom. But let's hope that, some of these trade deals, that some of these things that he's working on come to fruition. I don't have a lot of hope, but seeing 50 to 70 countries now starting to come out and say they want 0-0, let's hope he takes it. Let's hope he understands that that's what the negotiation was for. Let's hope he takes that, and let's hope that he then stops this trade war with China. That could be a painful trade war. And they do say when goods don't cross borders, militaries do. So that could be painful as well in terms of just global economics. And then again, I did a Grok search that if China just decided to dump all of their treasury bonds that they hold at the United States, $700 billion worth, it would cause massive inflation here in the United States, because our treasury would have to print money to make up for it. That could be a very difficult situation. Wouldn't be insurvivable, but it would cause a lot of issues. So we'll see. I'm crossing my fingers. I'm not a fan of tariffs. I don't think the risk is worth the reward that we're doing right now. But if it works out at the end of the day, I don't think that our economy, I don't even think the American people will see much difference. I don't think the American people will actually see much difference, even if this does work out. And that's part of the problem too, is it's just going to be remembered like, oh, we implemented all these tariffs and nothing happened to us because we didn't grow our manufacturing here. We started doing trade with them, and they stopped taxing their own people. We'll see, though. We will see. Again, I think if we have a full global free market, that would be good, but I just don't even know if that's the play right now. Hopefully that's the play, but we don't know. All right, y'all. Went about 30 minutes over. Had a lot to talk about today, so yeah, like I said, I won't be here next week. I will be traveling. I might again watch some of my feeds if I'm doing something. If I'm doing any live shows or something, anything like that, I will let you know. But other than that, make sure you click that like and subscribe button. Follow me across all social media channels, and I will see you next time.